Nephilim Love Story, The Hollow of Stars. Part 1, The Meeting. The olive trees bent under the weight of their own neglect. Sarah's father had died 3 winters past, and the grove he tended had grown wild in his absence. The villagers of Eris whispered that she should marry, that a woman alone was an invitation to misfortune. But Sarah found more peace among the twisted branches than in the smoke-thick halls where men haggled over dowries like livestock. Let them whisper, she thought as she climbed the terraced slopes that evening, her calloused hands familiar with every gnarled trunk. Let them measure my worth in goats and grain. I have inheritance enough in silence. It was the 7th evening of the new moon when she first saw him. The sky had that bruised quality, purple fading to ash, and the air held the peculiar stillness that comes before a change in seasons. Sarah had climbed to the highest terrace to salvage what olives remained, her basket half full, when she felt it, the sensation of being seen. Not watched, seen. Every part of me, she realized with a shiver that wasn't quite fear. As if he can read the very architecture of my soul. She turned slowly, her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and throat. He stood at the edge of the grove where the limestone cliffs began their sharp ascent. Even in the failing light, she could see he was wrong for this world, too tall, too still, his proportions somehow both human and utterly other. His skin held a faint luminescence, as if he'd swallowed moonlight. His eyes, when they met hers, were the color of winter stars. Sarah should have run. Every story her grandmother had hissed by firelight told her to run. Instead, she asked, "Are you lost?" The being Sarja, though she wouldn't learn his name for many more meetings, tilted his head with a curiosity that seemed almost childlike despite his terrible beauty. "No," he said, his voice like whined through deep caverns. "But I think perhaps you are." "Yes," something in her answered silently. "I have been lost since the day I understood what it meant to be a woman in this place. Since I learned that my thoughts were too sharp, my questions too bold, my spirit too untamed for the small box they prepared for me." Part 2, The Architecture of Secrets. Their courtship, if it could be called that, was built on careful choreography. The rules. Sarah would leave for the grove only when the village was consumed with its own concerns, during harvest festivals, or when the traveling merchants came through, or on Sabbath eves when everyone was shuttered in ritual preparation. Sarja moved only in darkness or mist, his footsteps too heavy to hide completely but careful enough to be mistaken for rock slides or wandering goats. They spoke first in the spaces between words, long silences where Sarah would sit on a flat stone, shelling olives, and Sarja would watch from the shadows, learning the rhythm of her breathing, the way she hummed old songs under her breath. The first touch. It came on a night when Sarah had climbed too high and slipped on loose scree. Sarja caught her before she registered the fall. His hands impossibly gentle for their size. She looked up into his face. So close now she could see the way starlight seemed to move beneath his skin like veins of silver, and felt something in her chest crack open. This, she thought with sudden, fierce clarity. This is what they mean when the poets speak of the soul recognizing its mirror. Not sameness but completion. "Why do you come here?" she whispered. "To this small place?" "To me." Sarja set her down carefully, but didn't release her entirely. His fingers, each nearly the width of her wrist, trembled slightly. "Because," he said, "among all the noise of heaven and earth, you are the first quiet thing I've found. I love him." Sarah realized, the knowledge settling into her bones like truth. "I love him and it will destroy me and I don't care. Let the world end. Let the heavens fall. I choose this." The signals. As weeks became months, they developed their language. The pale linen cloth on Sarah's fence meant the path was safe, the village distracted. A feather, impossibly large and shimmering with colors that had no names, meant Sarja had been near, had watched over her cottage while she slept. A smooth river stone, always warm as if held in a palm for hours, meant I am here. I am waiting. The hollow. They found their sanctuary in the heart of an ancient oak, its trunk hollowed by lightning and time into a space just large enough for 2. Sarja had to fold himself to fit, his knees drawn up, his great height compressed into something almost human-sized. Sarah would nestle against him, her head against his chest, listening to the strange double rhythm of his heartbeat. "What will happen to us?" she asked one night, tracing the luminous patterns that moved across his skin. "I don't know," Sarja admitted. "My kind, we are not meant for this. The mixing of what should remain separate." "But Sarah." He cupped her face with a gentleness that defied his power. "I would bear any consequence to have known you. Even death. Even death." She kissed him then, and in that kiss was a choice, a deliberate stepping off the edge of the world she knew. "If this is sin," she thought fiercely as his arms enfolded her, "then let me be the most joyful sinner who ever lived. If this is corruption, then purity is a lie I want no part of." Part 3, The Weight of Samuel. Sarah knew she was with child when the morning sickness came not as nausea but as a bone-deep exhaustion, as if the life inside her was drawing from some reserve deeper than blood. By the 3rd month, her belly was already swollen to what should have been 6 months' growth. "I am carrying something miraculous," she thought, hands pressed to the impossible swell of her abdomen. "Something the world will call monstrous. But I feel him moving, and his movements are gentle. He is mine, ours, and I will protect him with every breath I have left." She told Sarja in the hollow, her voice steady despite her fear. He went very still. Then, impossibly, he wept, tears that glowed faintly as they fell, leaving tiny scorch marks on the oak's interior. They will kill us, he said. All three of us. When they know. Then they won't know. Sarah's hands found his. We'll hide him. We've hidden this much already. I will not lose this child, she vowed silently. I will not lose this chance to mother something pure in a world that knows only cruelty. Let them come. Let them try. The birth. It came early and hard, in the depths of winter when the village was snowbound. Sarah labored alone in her cottage, biting down on leather to muffle her screams, while Sarja waited in the caves above. Close enough to hear, too far to help. I am splitting open, she thought through the agony. I am being remade. This pain is the price of miracles, and I pay it gladly. Samuel emerged not with a cry but with a roar that shook the cottage's foundations. He was the size of a 6-month child, his grip already strong enough to bruise, his eyes, his father's eyes, luminous and ancient. Sarah wrapped him in every blanket she owned and sang him quiet, tears of exhaustion and joy streaming down her face. My son, she thought, studying every impossible inch of him. My beautiful, terrible son. I will love you enough for a world that never will. The hiding. The cellar became Samuel's world. Sarah reinforced the door, told the neighbors she was storing grain. She nursed him in darkness, her body struggling to produce enough milk for his enormous appetite. When he cried, she sang the old songs louder, desperately, hoping the wind would carry the sound away. This is not the childhood I dreamed for you, she thought as she rocked him in the shadows, his weight already almost too much for her arms. But you are alive. You are loved. That is more than this world gives most of its children. Sarja visited when he could, squeezing his massive frame through the cellar's narrow entrance to hold his son. He would cradle Samuel in his arms, whispering to him in a language Sarah didn't understand. Something older than Aramaic, older than human speech. What are you telling him? She asked once. Stories, Sarja said. Of the stars. Of the time before time. Of his mother, who is braver than any of my kindred. The growth. By 3 years old, Samuel was the height of a full-grown man. By 5, he had to crawl through the cottage because the ceilings were too low. By 10, even hunched, his head brushed the cellar beams. And within Samuel's growing mind, a different kind of consciousness took root. I know the darkness of this cellar better than most men know the sun. He thought at age 7, tracing the stone walls he could map with his eyes closed. Mother sings to me of green fields and flowing water, but I have only this, only her, only the weight of my own limbs that grow heavier with each passing moon. Sarah watched her son's childhood compress and expand simultaneously. A giant child who played with pebbles as if they were marbles, who wept at crushed flowers, who asked questions in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. Why can't I go outside, Mama? Because they would kill you before you took 3 steps, she thought, but said only, because the world isn't ready for you, my love. Will it ever be? Sarah had no answer that wasn't a lie. She grows older, Samuel noticed one day when he was 12, seeing for the first time the silver threading through her dark hair, the way her hands shook when she climbed the cellar stairs. I am draining her life. My existence is consuming hers, bit by bit, and there is nothing I can do. I am her joy and her cage, and I don't know which truth cuts deeper. Part 4, the breaking, the taking of Sarja. It happened on a night when Sarja had grown careless with longing. He had come too close to the village, too visible in the moonlight, wanting only to see Sarah's cottage to know she was safe. The hunters had been waiting. They'd prepared for months. Digging a pit lined with iron, the old story said it burned their kind, covering it with brush and the carcass of a lamb as bait. When Sarja fell, his cry of pain echoed across the valley like a splitting mountain. Sarah heard it from her cottage and knew immediately what it meant. No, her mind screamed as she ran. No, not him. Take me instead. Take my life, my breath, anything but him. She ran to the ridge above the village square, arriving just as they were driving iron stakes through Sarja's limbs, pinning him to the earth. His luminescence was fading, his skin turning ashen. Please, she screamed, though she knew it was futile. Please, he's done nothing. The village elder, Malachi, turned to her with cold eyes. These creatures are abominations. The law is clear. She watched them kill him, watched as Sarja's eyes found hers across the distance, as his lips formed her name one final time, watched as the light went out of him, leaving only a broken body that seemed to collapse in on itself, shrinking until what remained could have been mistaken for a tall man. I am watching my heart die, she thought, and something inside her, some vital cord that connected her to hope, severed cleanly. I am watching love itself be murdered, and calling it righteousness. They burned him at dawn. Samuel, locked in the cellar, felt his father's death like a seismic shift. Father, his mind howled across the distance. Father, I feel you leaving. I feel the world growing colder. You promised you would teach me the names of stars. You promised we would walk together one day in the light. Father, don't. His howl of grief cracked the cottage's foundation. The years between, Sarah became a ghost in her own life. She moved through the village like a sleepwalker, tending her diminished grove, speaking only when spoken to. The villagers, satisfied they'd cleansed their valley, left her alone. A widow to a ghost, they thought, nothing more. I am a walking wound, she thought as she harvested olives with mechanical precision. I am grief wearing human skin. But I have Samuel. I still have Samuel. That must be enough. But in the darkness, she was all Samuel had. She taught him to read by candlelight, bringing him books stolen from the village scribe. She told him about his father, the truth of him, not the monster the villagers had created. She taught him gentleness, though the world would only ever see his size. Mother carries death in her eyes, Samuel thought at 15. Watching her move through the cellar with food she'd scraped together. She has given me everything. Her youth, her freedom, her place in the world. And I have given her nothing but fear and hiding and a love so heavy it bends her spine. You have your father's hands, she told him when he was 16. His palm as large as her torso. But you don't have to be what they feared. You can be what he truly was, kind, protective, capable of great love. Samuel, ducking beneath the beams, met her eyes. How can I love anyone when I'm a prisoner? How can you ask me to keep living in this darkness? His heart screamed. How can you ask me to remain small in a body built for vastness? But how can I hurt you by asking for freedom when you've sacrificed everything for mine? You love me, Sarah said simply. That's enough for now. It has to be, he told himself. For her sake, it has to be. The forest. By 18, the cellar could no longer contain him. Sarah had no choice but to let Samuel into the forest, into the caves where his father once lived. He moved only at night, leaving gifts for his mother. Bundles of firewood that would have taken 3 men to carry, baskets of berries, once a perfectly carved wooden bird. I am teaching myself to be human through small offerings, Samuel thought as he worked by starlight, his enormous fingers coaxing beauty from rough wood. I am building a bridge between what I am and what she needs me to be. But the loneliness, God, the loneliness is a living thing, eating me from the inside. He was achingly lonely. Sarah could see it in the way he lingered too long in the shadows when she visited, in the desperate way he asked about the village, about people, about the possibility of a life beyond hiding. He is withering, she realized with horror. Not his body but his spirit. I have kept him alive but not living. I have saved him from their violence only to watch him die slowly of isolation. Someday, she promised, though she didn't believe it. Liar, her heart accused. You are lying to your son. There is no someday for creatures like him. Part 5. The Lamb. It was a stupid, simple thing that ended him. A shepherd's lamb, barely weaned, had wandered from the flock into the deep forest. Samuel found it tangled in a thorn bush, bleeding pitifully. Something small, he thought, his heart aching with sudden purpose. Something I can save. Something I can protect the way Mother has protected me. Please let me do this one good thing. His heart, his gentle, foolish heart, couldn't bear it. He freed the lamb carefully, his massive fingers delicate as a seamstress's, and began carrying it back toward the village pastures. I will return it, he thought, hope blooming in his chest like spring. I will show them I am not what they fear. One kind act. One moment of proof. Perhaps that will be enough. Perhaps Mother can finally stop carrying this weight alone. The hunting party saw him at dawn. They didn't wait to ask questions. They saw a giant emerging from the forest, silhouetted against the rising sun, and all the old fears ignited like dry kindling. The demons return, someone shouted. Samuel stopped, confused. He held up the lamb, trying to show them, trying to explain. No, he thought as understanding dawned. No, not like this. I only wanted to help. I only wanted. The first pike hit him in the thigh. He stumbled, still clutching the lamb protectively. The second caught him in the shoulder. Please, he said, his voice the rumble of falling rocks. I'm not. I don't want. Mother, his mind cried out. Mother, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't be smaller, quieter, more acceptable. I'm sorry I couldn't survive in the shape they needed. I'm sorry my love for you wasn't enough to keep me safe. But they were beyond hearing. He saw Malachi among them, older now but with the same cold certainty. And Samuel understood, with terrible clarity, that this was always how it would end. He set the lamb down gently, pushing it toward the hunters. At least this, he thought. At least I can save this one small life. Tell my mother, he said, though his words were lost in their battle cries. Tell her I loved. The iron tore through him. He fell like a cedar, the impact shaking the ground, sending birds screaming from the trees. His blood, when it soaked into the earth, glowed faintly before fading to ordinary crimson. His last breath was a whisper. Mama, I'm coming, Father, he thought as darkness closed in. Teach me those star names now. I'm ready. I'm finally ready to stop hiding. The lamb, confused, bleated and trotted back to its flock. Part 6. The Reckoning. Sarah knew before they came. She felt it the way she'd felt Sarge's death. A sudden absence in the world. A grief so vast it momentarily stopped her heart. Samuel, she thought, and the world tilted. My son. My boy. My reason for breathing. She was in her garden when the delegation arrived, 3 days after Samuel's killing. Her hands were in the soil, planting herbs she would never harvest, when Malachi cleared his throat behind her. Sarah of the olive grove, he intoned formally, and she knew by the use of her full name that this was ceremonial, a judgment already rendered. She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. She was 43 now, but grief had aged her into something beyond years. Her hair, once dark as winter soil, had gone white after Sarge's death. After Samuel's, it had begun falling out in patches. Good, she thought distantly. Let me be ugly. Let me be monstrous. Let them see what their righteousness has created. You killed my son, she said quietly. We destroyed an abomination, Malachi corrected. The spawn of a Nephilim, the very thing the ancient laws forbid. He was 18. He was returning a lost lamb. He was gentle, her heart screamed. He wept at crushed flowers. He carved me birds from wood. He was more human than any of you will ever be. He was a threat, as his father was, as you have proven to be. Malachi gestured, and 2 younger men moved forward with rope. You are charged with the gravest crime. Congress with the forbidden, bearing fruit of corruption, harboring a creature that endangered this village. Sarah didn't resist as they bound her wrists. What danger? What harm did he ever do? His existence was harm enough, Malachi said, and she saw in his eyes not hatred but fear. They had always been afraid. That was the root of it. Not righteousness but terror of anything that reminded them how small they were. I regret nothing, she realized with sudden, diamond-hard clarity. Not one moment, not one kiss in the hollow, not one midnight feeding in the cellar. They have taken everything from me, and still I would choose it all again. That is a power they will never understand. The sentence. They debated for hours in the village square, with Sarah bound to a post like an animal. Some called for burning, others for stoning. The younger voices, those who'd never seen Sarja, suggested mercy. Exile to the salt wastes, where she would die slowly of thirst and exposure. Let them choose, she thought, lifting her chin. Let them show the world exactly what virtue looks like when it holds an iron pike. It was this, ultimately, that they chose. They stripped her of everything but a single threadbare dress. They gave her no water, no food, no tools. They pointed her toward the eastern wastes and told her if she ever returned, the mercy would end. Sarah walked. I am walking toward them, she realized as her feet found the rhythm of the damned. Toward Sarja. Toward Samuel. Toward the only home I've ever truly known. This isn't exile. This is liberation. Epilogue. The hollow truth. She walked for 3 days before her legs gave out. The salt flats stretched endlessly, white and burning under a merciless sun. She collapsed in the same position she used to take in the hollow of the oak. Knees drawn up, arms wrapped around herself. Almost, she thought, her lips cracked and bleeding. Almost there. And in that position she died. But in her final moments, as dehydration brought visions, she saw them. Sarja, impossibly tall against a sky full of stars, holding Samuel's hand. Her son was smiling, no longer hunched or hiding, standing at his full magnificent height. Mother, Samuel thought spoke, and in this place beyond death, she could hear him clearly. Mother, you're here. You're finally here. I've been waiting. Father has been teaching me the stars, just like he promised. There's one he named for you, the brightest one. Look, Mama, Samuel said aloud, and his voice was joy. Sarja extended his free hand. Come, he said. There is a place beyond their fear, a place we've prepared. Yes, Sarah thought, and it was answer and prayer and homecoming all at once. Yes, I'm coming. I'm coming home. Sarah reached up, and the villagers of Eris, satisfied with their purity, returned to their small lives. They filled in the hollow oak with stones. They burned Sarah's cottage and plowed salt into the olive grove. They erected a monument in the square warning of the dangers of corruption, of mixing what should remain separate. Within 3 generations, they'd forgotten the names. Within 5, the story had become myth, a cautionary tale about wickedness and righteousness. But on certain nights, when the moon is new and the wind comes down from Hermon's peaks, shepherds in the high pastures swear they see them. A woman with silver hair, a man of shimmering height, and a gentle giant, walking together through the olive groves that somehow, impossibly, still grow wild and green in that burned and salted earth. The villagers, safe behind their locked doors, convinced themselves it's only shadows, only wind, only the guilt of a valley that chose fear over love,